Welcome to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. I'm Frank Caporale, your host for tonight. We're trying to finish up the book of Job. I'm here with my good friend, John Genoese. How are you, John?
Good to see you, Frank.
Are you ready to tackle this end of the book?
Yes, sir. We've been working towards this for a very long time now.
Well, you know what the secret is
we're ready.
Is not how much you accomplish, but how much you learn. And so if you just race along and read things and say, I read that, but you didn't learn anything, it's still confusing to you, there's no explanation of what happened, then what's the sense of it? And that's what a lot of people do with the Bible. They don't take the time to digest it, read it, research it, and digest it, and then apply it. And without that, they lose interest. So please, don't be in a hurry when you're in the Bible. You have all of eternity to learn about God. Go ahead, John.
Well, before I go, I want to add something to what you just said. Of all the books, even Bible scholars kind of rush through this book because this is, I think, for both of us anyway, this is the most difficult book. It's the one that presents us with the most enigmas. It's the one that presents us with the most, let's say, I won't say unanswered questions, but I will say that what we see already here in chapters 38 and 39, we don't see God answering Job's challenges directly. We see God simply referring to himself, simply referring to his nature, simply expatiating his creation and his admiration for his creation, and asking Job, since Job wants to bring God to account and take God to court, so to speak, he's going, well, okay, if we're going to be adversaries, then let's first prove that you're a worthy opponent. Let's demonstrate that you are my peer. So this way, then we can discuss this. I will question you and you will answer me. And so now, God says, okay. The Lord then, at chapter 40, verse 1.
Well, wait a second. Could I answer your comment?
Oh, please. This is great. Go ahead.
The answer is always the same. It's God.
Frank, I wonder if you would do me a favor. Tell the story about the nun on the prayer line again, just briefly, if you would.
Well,
because when she challenged, remember, she challenged.
Oh, yeah.
Please tell that story again.
I guess she was in a religious order, and she, I guess, was stepping out of this religious order. She still was a devout person religiously, but she was no longer going to serve in an official order. But I don't think she was pleased with that. And so she argued with God, okay? And basically she said to him, you always have to have it your way. And she heard in her inner spirit, okay, I'm God. So if you're struggling in life, you might be like that woman who needed to hear that I'm God. And as we said earlier on the show, we talk about fairness and then we talk about God. No, we got to talk about God and justice, okay? And he decides what's just. But go ahead with chapter.
So now we have, then the Lord said to Job, will the fault finder contend with the Almighty? Let him who reproves God answer it. Okay, Job, let's see what you got. Then Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I have spoken, and I will not answer. Even twice I will add nothing more. So Job, and this I think is not really talked about, and I don't know too many people that share the understanding that I have with this. Job was aggrieved. Job was feeling put upon, he was feeling unfairly attacked, he was feeling all of these things, and rightly. Rightly, because we know from the beginning that there was no, that this was not anything that his actions precipitated. What happened to him was not because of anything he did. We know that. Yet here, Job completely forgot his grievance. And what does that say to you? To me, it says God speaking to him the way he spoke began to heal this broken man in his spirit. Because he wasn't thinking anymore about himself, his pain, his anguish, his sorrow, his loss. He was now having this ecstatic experience of having God speak to him directly. And now he says, I am insignificant. Now, the Lord answered Job, so he's certainly not insignificant to God. But Job became insignificant in his own eyes because of the grandeur and the majesty of what had just happened to him. He recalls his former words and says, none of it even matters.
Shut my mouth.
Amen.
Yeah, shut my mouth.
Amen.
Yeah, that's a good read on it, because when God shows up, what can you say? You know, it's just like if you're trying to help people out on a field of battle, or whether you're trying to help people out on a sports arena, and you're the assistant coach, and you think you know a lot, and you're giving a lot of opinions. But suddenly, when the head coach or the general shows up, everybody shuts up. Okay, now it's time to listen. Okay, it doesn't matter what we think we ought to do or how the world ought to be run. Okay, now we better listen. And the difference between hearing and listening is obedience. Okay, one is you're taking in information and you're not doing anything with it. When you're listening, you're taking in instructions and you're going to implement it. So, you know, if I tell you, we do it with the GPS all day long. Tells you make a right turn, you make a right turn, you're listening. Okay? Okay? If you only hear it and don't turn, you get on the wrong highway, go in the wrong direction. Go ahead. This is interesting.
I wonder, though, I don't think it's simply a matter that a superior has shown up. I think Job was moved. He was moved because he forgot his grievance. I don't think Job is afraid. I think he's just, his consciousness is being exponentially expanded in ways that very, very few other human beings in history have had their consciousness of God expanded.
Well, if you're fearful of a head coach, or you're fearful of the general, or your company commander, you're not going to function well, because you're going to be fearful. And that's why, you know,
That's
same way.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it's the same way with God. If you're fearful of God, you're not going to function right.
Or even a boss at work. Just
Yeah,
you know,
everything
common
is
everyday thing.
Everything is a defense. You always have an answer to defend yourself, so you're not even hearing what the other person's saying to be able to
that
follow
is
instructions.
so true.
Because you got your shield up automatically. Okay?
That is so true.
I didn't point. I'm just telling you what needs to be done to correct the situation. I didn't blame you for doing it. I remember I worked on an assembly line once in a defense industry, and we were building transmitters for submarines.
Can you talk about that now?
Huh?
I mean, isn't that kind of like classified stuff there?
Well, what I'm going to say isn't.
Okay.
And one of my schoolmates who graduated from this technical school with me made a mistake in wiring this thing. And so I went to the supervisor and I said, I can't do what you're telling me to do because there's somebody's connection already in that port. And they said, oh yeah, take that out, put it over there, and do what you have to do. So I had to correct the mistake before I could proceed, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So he didn't blame me. but I noticed that my friend was no longer at his workstation and he was gone.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So you bring up a problem, you bring up a mistake. You shouldn't be fearful. It's not your fault.
Mm.
You're looking to those that know better for instructions, correction, or whatever, or approval.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important. That's how God wants us to operate. He wants us to operate where we're either asking for direction, correction, or approval. You know, somebody said that the devil is used like God's hoe in the hand of a farmer. He weeds out what he doesn't want, and he protects what he does want. And that's what a farmer uses a hoe for. He holds out the evil and the weeds, and he protects the plants. Very interesting.
I've heard that also. And I have to say, I have never come to peace with that, because Satan's very name means adversary. Yet, if God is using that, I don't know. I maybe my mind is just too small, but there's something about that just kind of bothers me. I don't know. Maybe it'll become clear as we continue moving forward here. Okay. So we continue in chapter 40, verse 6, unless there's more commentary.
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. Again, a second time. The Lord answered Job out of the storm, even though Job is saying, I have nothing further to say. And God says, no, not so fast. Not so fast. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm and said, now gird up your loins like a man. I will ask you, you will instruct me. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified, or do you have an arm like God? Can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with eminence and dignity, and clothe yourself with honor and majesty. Pour out the overflowings of your anger, and look on everyone who is proud and make him low. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him. Tread down the wicked where they stand. Hide them in the dust together. Bind them in the hidden place. Then I will also confess to you that your own right hand can save you. So if Job can fulfill all of the previous qualifications, then God will acknowledge that your own right hand can save you.
Yeah, that's very powerful, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. Because what is God describing to Job here? But what he does. So God is saying, this is what I do. If you can do what I do, then I will say to you, I will acknowledge that your own right hand can save you. But of course, Job knows that he cannot. So now God is going to go on and give more illustrations from his creation of the order of it, the magnificence of it, but still not telling Job the full story that we got at the beginning of the book. Right? That Satan came before me and all this stuff. God never, he's so far, he hasn't mentioned that at all. Doesn't explain it at all. But God is not a bully. God is not bullying Job. But I believe, based on what we read before, what God is giving Job is what Job really needs. Job needs to know that his understanding of God as perfect and magnificent and beyond reproach is the right understanding. Because all of this experience has challenged his understanding of God, and his friends have come along and said, you did wrong, and he knows he didn't, so there's something really off. So now God is saying, in my heart, this is what it came, and God is saying, be at peace, I am exactly who you think I am.
Well, or more so than you think I am. Okay?
Yes.
Okay? I'm weeding out any false accusations
Oh, that's
you might
beautiful.
have.
That's
because we
beautiful.
all have misnomers at times of what we make God out to be.
Indeed. Oh,
Sometimes
absolutely.
we've been
That's
taught that,
absolutely the
sometimes
case.
we come up with it on our own, sometimes the world situation makes us think things that are not true. But go ahead.
Okay, now we're going to talk about these two creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan.
Yes.
Okay, there's the English pronunciation. Behold now Behemoth, which I made as well as you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold now his strength in his loins and his power in the muscles of his belly. He bends his tail, it's like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs are like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Let his maker bring near his sword. Surely the mountains bring him food, and all the beasts of the field play there. Under the lotus plants he lies down, in the covert of the reeds and the marsh. The lotus plants cover him with shade, the willows of the brook surround him. If a river rages, he's not alarmed. He's confident, though the Jordan rushes to his mouth. Can anyone capture him when he's on watch? With barbs, can anyone pierce his nose? And I'm just going to continue if that's okay. Just go right on into 41.
Yeah,
Is that
sure.
right? Because now we'll talk about Leviathan. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak to you soft words? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him for a servant forever? Will you play with him like a bird or bind him for your maidens? Will traders bargain over him? Will they divide him amongst merchants? Or can you fill his skin with harpoons? Or his head with fishing spears? You lay your hand on him and remember the battle, because you won't do it again. Behold, your expectation is false. Will you be laid low even at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he dares to arouse him. Who is he then that can stand before me? If you can't stand before Leviathan, how on earth do you think you can stand before me?
The creator of them.
Right? His maker. Who has given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. That's an interesting phrase there. We're going to see that a few times. I will not keep silent concerning his limbs or his mighty strength or his orderly frame. And who can strip off his outer armor? Who can come up within his double mail? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth there is terror. His strong scales are his pride, shut up as with a tight seal. One is so near to the other that no air can come between them. They are joined so to one another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezes flash forth light. His eyes are like eyelids of the morning, and out of his mouth go burning torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils goes forth smoke, as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and his flame goes forth from his mouth. In his neck lodges strength, and dismay leaps before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together, firm on him and immovable. His heart is as hard as a stone, even as hard as a lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty fear. Because of the crashing, they are bewildered. The sword that reaches him cannot avail, nor the spear, nor the dart, nor the javelin. He regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee, and sling stones are turned into stubble for him. Clubs are regarded as stubble. He laughs at the rattling of the javelin. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. He spreads out like a threshing sledge on the mire, makes the depths boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a jar of ointment. Behind him he makes a wake to shine. One would think the deep to be gray-haired. Nothing on earth is like him, one made without fear. He looks on everything that is high and is king over all the sons of pride.
Well, the question people will ask all the time is, who are these creatures?
Behemoth and Leviathan.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
were they animals that no longer exist, that were so fearful? Or is it possible they are creatures like the alligator, the crocodile, or the rhinoceros? I mean, when he describes how much armor this creature has, although it eats grass, okay? You think of it as a land creature, where the other one, you think of it, makes a home more in the depths of the sea. So the main thing is not to, again, try to analyze who, what, where, is that these creatures were designed in a particular way by God for a particular purpose. They self-perpetuate their race. They have survived generations. You can look at a snapping turtle and people will tell you they're prehistoric animals. They exist hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they are fierce and furious. They'll take your finger off, just get near enough.
Oh yeah, yeah.
they'll
I've had
snap- They'll snap
I've had an experience of a close encounter with one, and I never forget it.
put a mop stick out there, and he'll snap it in half. You know,
Mhm.
so this is what God created, and without understanding that it is from the hand of God, you're starting off in the wrong foot automatically.
Mhm.
And so,
Well, and so as far as Behemoth goes and Leviathan goes, the way he gave us the illustration of the ostrich as being, this is what, when you have no wisdom, this is what it looks like. Now, God brings us these creatures that clearly do not exist to serve man, right? They don't exist to serve man. They're very, very clearly not at all under man's dominion. But their existence, their worth, their reason for being is entirely outside the scope of man's experience. And man, basically saying man can do whatever they want, and all of man's actions and all of man's weapons are completely insignificant to these creatures. So it's an invitation to Job to look on these things, and we note, right, that now God is now completed his discourse at this point. God is done. And so God, notice, he ended his discourse with Behemoth and then continued with Leviathan. And Leviathan, it's if man is going to define all of these things in terms of himself, now God faces you with Leviathan. You cannot use this one. You cannot bargain with this one. You cannot negotiate with this one. This one doesn't care about you. You could all disappear, and this one's life would go on undisturbed and unchanged. If none of you were here, this would make the slightest bit of difference to this. And so the invitation is, okay, Job, why? Why? Job has no answer for this, and God didn't give him one, because
No.
God made these creatures for his pleasure.
and we should not fall into the trap of coming up with an answer. People try to explain things that are unexplainable. So if Job's sitting before God and he can't explain it, why do I have to try to explain it?
Right.
Okay, I've got to accept that God had a reason for creating this creature, even if it was just to humble us, just to show us our limitations on some occasions, okay? That without God, we're lost.
That is magnificent. In a previous telecast, we mentioned the desire for order. right? The desire to explain the unexplainable. And this, I believe, is the root of idolatry. This is the root of man creating explanations for himself and answering the unanswerable, in spite of the fact that there is no answer for it, but yet man is not content to let it be unanswerable. He has to fill in the blanks. And filling in the blanks is where idols come from.
And that's where they get in trouble.
Amen.
Well, I just want to say one last thing before we end the show today, and that is verse 14 says, "Then I would praise you, and your own strength would save you." And that's another thing that people who are in idolatry have figured out a way to be saved, which isn't going to save them. You know, somebody.
Oh, I never saw that. I never saw that in there. That's excellent.
Okay. So,
that is excellent.
what can we say? Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. And the conclusion, again, will be next week. Tune in. If you want to see the previous shows on Job, especially chapter 1, to understand this, if you joined us in the middle, thefutureofisrael.org, or go to info, thefutureofisrael.org, to ask any questions of us. Have a good day. So, if you want to sponsor our show, please, by all means, contact us, because public access allows us to put it on any public access channel in the country. And all you have to do is require a form, and we'll send them the show. And listen, it's free. You'll not only be blessed by it, but you'll bless your community by it. And listen, we're just trying to promote people to read the Old Testament and understand how God dealt and is dealing with people. How he said one thing after another, trust me and lean not on your own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So, listen, if there's a void anywhere in your life, I'm sure God can fill it if you would just start seeking him for it. The word says, you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. So have a good evening. Shalom. Be back next week. We'll be here to conclude it.